Welcome to my channel. My name is Melinda Van Fleet. I'm an intuitive and energetic business and leadership mentor. And I am super excited to continue on this series about writing tips with a very special guest, my beautiful niece, Sienna Krieg. Hi, Sienna.
Hi, thank you for having me. It's nice being here. I'm a first year student at DePaul. I am also a writer for the DePaul newspaper. I've also been podcasting with Melinda for a very long time now, actually. It's been 2 years since we've last podcasted.
Yes. And if anyone has been connected with me that long time, you will remember that Sienna was a regular guest on the podcast called The Good Karma Success Coach. And what I did was I created a playlist with all of those episodes. I believe there's like 14 episodes because it was a little over a year, years 2021 and 2022, which seemed like
Hmm.
forever ago. And I put that link in the notes for this podcast, and I'll always include that. So I had a feeling that that podcast would come to a close as I shifted gears. And Sienna at the time was a junior in high school, and she was busy doing her thing. So it was just kind of like divine timing. But remember at the time when I said, "Hey, we're going to be changing it up." I just had a feeling that someday we'd be back.
Yeah.
So when it came to me to shift gears on my channel a little bit and dial into writing tips a little deeper, it came to me intuitively to ask Sienna to come back because she's going to school for writing. Like she said, she writes for her local newspaper. And again, like she already mentioned, is on Medium. So I will put all those links in the show notes as well. So
Yes. Thank you.
yes, you're welcome. Again, super excited to have you back. We are
Yay.
going to dive in today and talk about book covers, which is a really big topic and super important. And in conjunction, talk about this amazing series called Fourth Wing, which already has another book out and another book on its way. And I'm going to share a little story in conjunction to cover art and how I ended up buying this, which you can probably guess a little bit, but it has a little bit of a background story. So here, and so here we go. So last fall, for the paper that I'm a freelance writer for here in the Keys, Upper Keys Weekly, I had the amazing opportunity to interview this best-selling author. He's a USA Today bestselling author, Nicholas Harvey. And he is self-published. All of his books are on Amazon. And I don't know exactly how many books he has now, but there's a lot. I mean, there could be like 20 books. And he has several different series. This series that I have in my hand is about AJ Bailey. And he was here in the Keys doing a special event with Concrete Public Divers, which is the dive company that is out of the same marina that my husband and I's business, Good Karma Sport Fishing, is out of, called Tavernier Creek Marina. So we follow all that. So Ashley Hudson, who owns Concrete Public Divers, asked me if I would write an article interviewing Nicholas about the event and have it published in the paper. So it all worked out beautifully. I went to the after party event and met Nicholas, also saw Ashley. And when I was done interviewing him, I briefly shared that I was looking to get back into self-publishing, but I didn't feel aligned with being a non-fiction writer anymore, that I wanted to get into fiction. And that's not my background, to be really honest. It's not my background, which is one of the reasons why I'm doing this podcast. And I've created a link with writing tip videos from other YouTubers, which I mentioned in my last podcast. I'll also put that in the show notes. But Nicholas had some really great advice. And he talked about his journey in self-publishing on Amazon and how having covers that were succinct within the series was really important. and how he really noticed a difference in a big shift in his business as a self-published author when he really focused on having amazing cover art. When he really paid special attention to it and had all the themes align where someone, reader could easily see that this was his series and be attracted to, picking up a copy of his book by the cover art. So initially, he hadn't started his journey in that way. And I'm paraphrasing what he told to me because it's been over a year. But I remember that and I agreed because when I wrote my two books, which I have here, I paid special attention to the cover art as well and was very intentional about it. However, it was a different genre. So I really needed to do some homework on the fiction lane and really understand, what was a really great cover. So I marched myself into Barnes and Nobles in Coral Gables, Miami, and I spent hours looking at all of the cover art for the genre of young adult, science fiction, fantasy, romance. I took pictures. And I really spent a lot of time like noticing what authors had a lot of books, what were their covers like, and really just trying to understand it and kind of get it even just ingrained in me what really popped off the shelf and who had shelf space. My background is retail, so I'm very aware of shelf space and what that means and how things were displayed and such. So I had absolutely no intention of buying any books. I really didn't. However, this particular book was on a table and it jumped out at me because it had this cover art, it was metallic, it was hardcover, and it was big. I was like,
Yes.
oh, what's up with this book? So I bought it. And then again, I wasn't going to buy any books, and I bought this book. And I came home and I said to my niece Sienna, I said, have you heard of this book yet? And she hadn't. So I started to read it, but for me, it was a little long. So, and I'm quite busy, so I just didn't have time to finish it. So I sent it to Sienna to read. So you tell me what you think about covers and cover art. I'm going to pass the ball to you
All
because you
right.
have similar opinions.
Yeah, I definitely think that Fourth Wing has amazing cover art, and that's something that like I'm glad that you brought up because it's like you said, the metallic, like that's something very different. Like in cover art, I look for something different. That's something that's like unique and not like most other cover arts. And I think Fourth Wing definitely does that. Um, in terms of other books, I just look for anything like really like, ooh, like just intriguing. So like I have an example. I have two examples actually. Both are from the same not artist, author Leigh Bardugo. She's the author of Shadow and Bone. So this is a cover art of hers that really attracted me. I think it's just number one, the font really stands out to me. Again, like in this golden, like little color, and then just this hand with the ring and the scorpion. It kind of makes you wonder, like, what is this? Like, what exactly is this book about? That really intrigued me. And I also, this is not really cover art, but I also really like when authors like make the book pages colored like on that side. I really love when authors do
Mhm.
that. I think that's a big trend right now, and I think it's really cool. Here's another book from her. This is more popular, Six of Crows. This really attracted me. I love crows. I love ravens, and I think this is so pretty. It's just really, really well done. I love it. So yeah, I definitely am a big fan. Like I judge books by their covers, and I know it's like we're all guilty to admit it, but I definitely do that.
Exactly. And then that is, I felt really guilty
Yeah.
that I did that. And when I asked you to fill out the Google Doc about just different aspects of the genres that you like, and I appreciate you already shared that with a friend. And I'll put that link also too in the show notes if anyone's watching this video, if you want to give me your insight on these genres, I would love that. And I can put you on the list to be a beta reader when my new book starts to get put together. But when I saw that Sienna judges the book by a cover too, I was like, oh, oh, so bad, so bad. So yeah, and I guess because like I grew up with your grandma and my mom reading lots of romance books and
Mm,
their Fabio, I think that was his name, was like the hot cover, so I just like remember those things and remember some of the books I read when I was a kid and yeah, it's always been the cover. So how do you
yeah.
feel like if you judged a book by its cover and then it fails to deliver?
Oh, I feel like this has happened a couple of times. It is a bit disappointing. Like, this is usually when I get books from the library, because if I want to actually buy a book, I really research into it first because I want to like the book. But if I just kind of want to get something from the library very quick and easy, I'll kind of just judge the book by its cover per usual. And if it's disappointing, it's like, oh, like the cover like went to waste, you know what I mean? That's kind of how I feel about it. I feel like with a beautiful cover, there's so much potential. And usually with beautiful covers, automatically assume the book's going to be very good. So it's kind of hard coming to terms with that.
So that's interesting in terms of if you go to buy a book, you do more research on it first.
Yes. Yeah.
Gotcha. So how do you do your research then? And kind of explain that process.
Always look at Goodreads. Goodreads has so many reviews by all sorts of people, so I 100% trust those reviews. I definitely like to look obviously at like the little descriptions they have on the backs when they're usually provided online, like the little reviews right there. Usually stuff like that. I mean, if I really want to go into depth more about the book, then I can look up like author interviews, but that's kind of rare.
Okay.
So,
Gotcha. So you mainly go by Goodreads. Interesting.
yes.
Okay. Okay. And did you know that Goodreads is owned by Amazon?
I did not.
Yeah. Yeah. So it's they're friends. So yeah, so I didn't know then too if you also looked at Amazon reviews too or just focused on Goodreads.
Occasionally, sometimes I do look at Amazon reviews,
Okay.
but mostly Goodreads.
So Goodreads. Okay.
Yeah.
Cool. Cool. So speaking of the library, so in my research, yesterday I went to the library and these two books were on the new release section. So I'm not quite sure how new they are. Someone out there can probably provide more insight than what I know, but A Sorceress Comes to Call, T. Kingfisher. And I just got these yesterday, so I haven't done any research. I haven't looked at them but I judged them by their cover.
Yeah.
So I'm sharing them here. If someone in the audience has read them and cares to leave a comment about these two books. But when I showed them to Sienna right before we started our podcast, she was like, "Oh, cool covers." So,
They are really pretty.
mhm. They are really pretty. So you wonder, if, and they both have gold. So you wonder if they've been influenced at all by Fourth Wing.
Hmm.
And here, here's Iron Flame for those of you if you
I
haven't
love
seen.
that cover. That
Yeah,
one's
it's
really fantastic.
beautiful. So kudos to obviously the publisher, obviously Rebecca, of course, respect, and the artist. So, and then the third one, Onyx. What's it called? Onyx?
I think
Uh,
Onyx Storm,
Onyx
I
Storm.
believe.
Yes, which is coming out in January. So
Yes.
Yeah. And there's a little blurb this month in Cosmopolitan, like an excerpt from the new book in
Oh,
Cosmopolitan magazine.
yeah,
Mhm.
I have to read that.
Yeah, yeah. So tell me, since we're on the topic of her books, like what then, because they're big,
Right.
what made you keep going reading them?
I think what made me keep going was although they're really long books, and sometimes I do struggle with that,
Mhm.
just getting through them, but those books I kept going like I just kept going because I really liked the plot that she set up. I really liked the different like plot lines that she had, the relationships between each characters. I thought that was really interesting. It's a fantasy book, obviously, and there's dragons involved, and I thought that whole the connection between the humans and the dragons really interested me. I thought that was one of the best parts of the books. That really intrigued me, so that kept made me kept going. I really just liked the main character. The main character was really interesting. She was very complex, which is what kept me going. So I would definitely say those were the top things.
That's cool. That's really cool. And I want to ask you this, so I hope you take it like as a compliment. But I thought of this morning on my walk. It came to me. So Violet in the book series, and I don't want to be a spoiler in case someone hasn't read it, but I'll just keep this light, is they always, she refers to herself, small and frail.
Hmm.
So you're far from frail, but you are petite.
Yes, yes, that's very true.
So yes, and you're a thinker, as you've been
Hmm.
told many times in your 18 years of life.
Yes.
So would you say you felt very relatable to Violet? Like, how would you say that,
I would
if at all?
definitely say that. I think that's what also made me really like the character was because I feel like I related to her both like physically and mentally because like you said she's definitely described as like a small person like and I'm not just talking it's not just like like a small person but like an actually like you know what I mean like very like shorter like definitely like a little skinnier like on that side just small in general like petite which I really related to because I feel like a lot of book characters are not like that so I did like that aspect.
Yeah, yeah, that's cool. And I've watched a lot of interviews with Rebecca because I like to hear the journey of the writer because anyone out there, I'm also doing this series to encourage fellow writers to keep going or to get started or to complete whatever stage you're
Yeah.
in. And writing is often, you could say, a lonely process. I've heard other authors and writers say it's thankless. I would agree with that. And so I always like to hear the from the actual authors. So anyhow, um, Rebecca talks about having EDS. I think I got that correct. Um, a very rare genetic disease, and I haven't quite gotten this far in the book, but I gather Violet has something either similar or the same.
Yes,
So
I believe so.
yeah.
Because I don't know if this is a spoiler, but in the book she often like gets very hurt, like very
Yes.
often.
Hmm.
So,
Yes. And I think that's um, an aspect, and someone can correct me if I'm wrong, an aspect of EDS, which Rebecca has. And she has said that four of her sons, she has six children, four of the six of her children have it as well. So I think that's, seems to be also very relatable to people who may be
mhm,
struggling with something, especially if it's chronic or they haven't been able to quite figure it out, and it keeps, plaguing them or holding them back with certain things in their life. So yeah, I love to hear the actual authors share, what inspired them, what kept them
yeah,
going. And, the other thing too that I think is really cool about Rebecca that really needs to be shared along the same lines of just inspiring people, motivating them to keep going, is like she's been a writer for years, writing romance books, like incredible amount of books. So
Hmm.
so it's very cool when someone, finally like quote unquote makes it big, however you want to put it.
Yeah.
And then, has such a successful series that looks also like it will be leading to something on, a network, which I'll be super excited about. So
Yeah.
yeah. Awesome. Anything else you want to add about covers, cover art, this series in general, since we're kind of focused on the Fourth Wing series for this episode?
Um, I don't think so. I feel like we covered a lot of range, which was good.
Awesome. Yeah, I want to say this just came to me. Um, for me, such a big book is challenging for someone who's super busy. And I own a business with my husband and have lots of projects and things I do. So if someone can't get through the book and they're feeling a little guilty, don't be. You're not alone. And I'm quite sure that there's a decent abandonment rate on large books. I would definitely say that people probably, even though they like the book, just haven't found time to, get through it. And this was something on the flip side, and I'll probably do a separate podcast episode about this, but when I wrote my books, the writing coach I had at the time was not able to share when I asked her actually point blank, how does word count relate to number of pages? She didn't know. So she kept having our group. I was in a writing mastermind. So this was back in 2020 into 2021. She kept saying, focus on having like 30,000 word count, 30,000 word count. So I didn't know. I mean, this is my first time writing book. So when I wrote my book, I was so proud. I'm not a fluffy writer or fluffy speaker really. So I just wrote, and again, mine are
Hmm.
nonfiction. And I got it and I was like, oh my gosh, it's really thin. I was like really horrified that it was so thin. I was like, oh my God. And so that was like a huge learning for me. But what ended up happening, and again, I'll probably do a whole podcast about this because I think it's a really important topic and I can share a lot of knowledge about page count and word count, but learn from mistakes. What ended up happening was I got bestseller from Amazon on short reads, which I didn't even know was a thing. And I had a huge amount of people say to me that they were so happy that it was short and to the point because they felt accomplished within a shorter period of time. So for example, they could read it on a plane ride, a vacation. It's even though it's personal development, it's not heavy, it's light, it's lots of stories. They could read it in a weekend. Like they didn't
Hmm.
feel like they had this albatross of a book that they then had guilt around not finishing. They felt very accomplished that like, oh my gosh, I finished something. So like a check off the list. Um,
Hmm.
type of mindset. So anyhow, so I wanted to share that in relation to the Fourth Wing series. So if someone's like, oh, I feel so ashamed that I haven't been able to get through it, don't be ashamed. It's
I
okay.
know I 100% agree with you. There is
Hmm.
nothing wrong with not completing that. There was points where it was hard for me to get through that book,
Mm.
and I still enjoyed it. But
Yeah.
there was points where I was just like, "Oh my gosh."
Hmm.
So, I
Yeah.
completely understand those people. I completely understand.
Yeah. And for me, when I heard you say that, who I completely look up to as a reader, and obviously you're a writer too, and look up to you as a reader because you like whip through series and you're like, oh, I'm done. I read that. I already read all the Harry Potter books. I read all the Shadow and Bone books. And I'm like,
Yes.
my God, like how does she do that? Because it's not even just the fact that like I'm a working adult. It's more of like I just can't sit that long and read.
Yeah.
So kudos.
Thank you. I appreciate
Yeah.
that. I mean,
So
everybody has different like attention spans, and I 100% respect that. So,
yeah. Yeah. So when I heard that even you thought it was, I was like, okay, I'm not super crazy.
right.
So just a little bit.
Yeah.
Just a little bit crazy. So anyhow, well, thank you so much. This was an awesome conversation. I hope it sheds some light for people out there. I hope you pick up any of these books that you may be interested in. I will put the authors that I mentioned in the show notes in case you are also attracted to the cover and wish to read. And
Yes.
yeah, and how can people get hold of you, Sienna?
People can get a hold of me through Medium, number one. That will be listed in that description. Also my email. We can put my email in
Okay.
the description as well. I think that should be good.
Okay, awesome. I love it. I love it. So thank you so much. You're amazing.
Thank you for
And
having me.
yeah, until next time, everyone, I would love to hear
Yes.
from you. Please subscribe and keep in touch with us. Thanks for joining in. Bye.
Thank you.